Hello, for those of you who are joining us from the United States, good morning. For those of you who are joining us from Israel or Europe, good evening. I am Deborah Isaac, President of the American Zionist Movement, and we thank you for being with us today. The American Zionist Movement is comprised of 39 national Jewish Zionist organizations and works across a broad ideological, political, and religious spectrum, linking American Jewish community together in support of Israel, Zionism, and the Jewish people. AZM is the U.S. Zionist Federation of the World Zionist Organization. We have been here, I am actually speaking to you from Jerusalem, and we've been here over the last couple of weeks. And as we see the war break out in the Ukraine, of course, we're all quite concerned. We understood that many people are interested in hearing what is happening on the ground, both in the Ukraine and on the border with the Ukraine, and what is being done locally by local organizations as well as by Israel and Israeli organizations. A few housekeeping notes. This will be a recorded session. I want to also welcome our partner, Yaniv Nachmias, who is the Executive Director of the World Zionist Organization, Department of Irgun and Israelis Abroad, who will say a few words about the Zionist Federation in the Ukraine. Welcome, Yaniv.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the AZM for this initiative, this very important initiative. As Deborah said, my name is Yaniv Nachmias. I'm the Director of the Department of Irgun and Israelis Abroad in the WZO. The department is led by Mrs. Gusti Yoshua Braverman, and we oversee the activity of 36 different Zionist federations, just like the AZM and the Zionist Federation of Ukraine around the world. One of our main goals is actually to strengthen the federation itself. Therefore, in the last few days, we've been in contact with Elena Zaslavskia, who's the director of the federation, in order to see how we can help them and assist them. And we're trying to make connections between them and the Zionist Federation of Romania, as well as the Zionist Federation of Hungary, in trying to find different solutions for people, for refugees going from Ukraine to the neighboring countries. We also work quite closely with the Chief Rabbi of Poland, Rabbi Shudrich, to see if there can be any assistance to refugees, and trying to assist as much as possible for the Zionist Federation of Ukraine in whatever they need. And unfortunately, the needs are big and large, as you will hear in a few moments, and we try to assist with whatever we can. So thank you, and thank you again, the AZM, for hosting this important briefing.
Thank you, Yaniv, a valued ally of the AZM. Of course, as I had mentioned, we at the AZM are a branch of the World Zionist Organization. Just wanted to update you on a few points before we call on our first speaker. We did get some updates from the Jewish Agency, and there are now over 5,000 Israelis, 5,000 Ukrainians who are looking to make Aliyah at this point, and many volunteers and employees on the ground in the Ukraine. Several flights are going to be coming out, with the first Olim coming sometime next week from the Ukraine to Israel. But I would like to turn now to our first speaker, who is Ambassador Yoel Leon, who is also a friend of mine, and of, I think, many of you who are on here from the New Rochelle community, because he had spent some time living in New Rochelle while he was working for the foreign ministry or for the consulate in New York. Joel is the immediate past ambassador of Israel in Ukraine, and he served in Kiev until August 2021. He has spent many years, his full career, in the Israel Foreign Service, serving in many senior positions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Jerusalem and several postings abroad. He is currently on special assignment in Moldova to assist in the crisis with the Jewish refugees coming out of the Ukraine. Of course, we all know the difference today is that we have a state of Israel to look after all of us wherever we may be, and assisting now those who are in trouble in the Ukraine and in the surrounding countries. So Joel, if you would tell us a little bit about what your mission is there, what you're experiencing, what you're seeing, what you've accomplished.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great to see you, and I hope that everything is okay with Yosef. I know we had a lot of disagreements when I was in Ukraine, but we are brothers, and brothers always in the family are fighting, and he is my brother, and he knows it. We right now, you said before that the Olim are coming from Ukraine, yes, but there is no flights from Ukraine to bring them to Israel. First of all, they have to leave Ukraine. That's one of the biggest problems that we are facing. If you take into consideration that any male between 18 and 60 cannot leave Ukraine, 60, because they are waiting to be drafted in the army. So the things that we see on the border are really hard. We see families where the father has to go back, where they are only letting the mother and the kids passing through. Now we helped yesterday. I personally was there in order to have a smooth passage of the children of the Chabad orphanage in Odessa. There are two orphanages in Odessa, and this one, the one was out. It's Rabbi Baksh's orphanage, and this one was still in Odessa. So yesterday, 96 kids, we managed to have a smooth passage for them. Very, very intense, very, very emotional to see this. And I think that the most emotional is to see all my friends that I have known there coming out, and refugees are refugees. Doesn't matter if you wear a gvir, as we say in Hebrew, somebody very rich, or you wear the poorest guy. You are going out with your pekeler one suitcase, and it doesn't matter again if the suitcase is a Louis Vuitton or a bag of stuff that you have found to take it. The people, thanks God, the Jewish people has the state of Israel, and people know that we are waiting for them. You said the Sochnut said 5,000. I see here we opened an office in Kishinev. I'm sitting right now there here at the office because we understood that it is not only to take the people out and to help them at the border. We have only also to provide them with documents to help them to make Aliyah. So we have here the Sochnut. We have here the foundation of Eckstein Keren Yedidut. We have Nativ, which is from the Prime Minister's office, in order to help the people to come to Israel, and we, the representatives of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to give documents to the people. We tried to help the people come to Israel. I see the guy from Nativ who has to verify the Judaic ascendance of the people. He's doing around 30 families a day. Now another guy is coming to help him, because only after they are receiving the okay that they have the right to go to Israel, then they can come to the Sochnut and the Keren Yedidut in order to continue the process. So we dealt today with, I think, I was dealing with it, so around 30 Israelis. One who was married to a Ukrainian lady. They have the marriage certificate. They are coming to Israel. We wanted to have everything smooth, so we have to register. You have to give them to give to the children who were born, to give passports, etc. So we have a whole consular work to do in order to help the people. The people are without nothing. I see. First of all, I have to say something good for the Moldovan government. You know, Moldova is one of the poorest country in Europe, if not the poorest one. And they are here receiving, right now, 90,000 refugees are in Moldova. So no one wants to stay in Moldova. They want to continue to another country, but they are transiting here, and this country has to help them. I see the Jewish community here. they need donations. They need people. I'm sorry that I'm calling for donations for the communities. There are three organizations dealing with this here. The general community, the Chabad community, and the community of Agudat Israel Rabbi Zaltzman, who are dealing with refugees. Everyone has around 700 people dealing with them, 700 Jewish people. So we are also helping. We're also bringing donations, but it's never enough. And you see the people that they need everything, from toys for the children to shoes to food and kosher food. They are all the Bet Chana of Chabad and seminar and the other yeshivas who came here. Yes, it's transit, but you have to feed them. So try to imagine that you have 4,000, not 4,000, maybe I'm exaggerating, but a good couple of thousands of people, of Jewish people here who are transiting. So I know that the Federation in Romania is trying to help. They need buses, they need shuttles from the border. It's hard, but it's a schus to be here. I'm feeling that in all my careers, that's the best things that I can do, to be here. I have teams in the north, teams in the south. As I said, our office in Kishinev. I personally am going to the borders to do it. And that's what we meant when we say that the state of Israel is here for every Jewish people in the world, and also for non-Jewish, because believe me, when we are there and somebody is coming to us, see the flag of Israel and ask us, do you have something? Always we have some candies or something to give to the kids. We have blankets. We are trying now to bring more stuff from Israel to help. So that's the situation.
Joel, thank you for your presentation. I think we're going to ask Yosef to speak, and I already know there are several questions for you as well, but let's have Yosef speak, and then we will have all the questions at the end, if that's okay. Okay, so I would like to introduce Yosef Zissels, who's joining us from Kiev, where he is the honorary president of the Zionist Federation of Ukraine. He's a longtime leader of the Jewish community in Ukraine and past chairman of the National Vaad and Confederation. Joseph is a member of the Executive Committee of the World Jewish Congress and a former chairman of the General Council of the Euro-Asian Jewish Congress. So Yosef will be speaking with us through a translator, and then once he has told us how things are for him inside of Ukraine, we will open up for the questions that you've already sent us to both Ambassador Leon and to Mr. Zissels. Mr. Zissels, please.
Да. Я всех приветствую. Большое спасибо, что организовали такую встречу.
I want to say hello to everyone. I thank you for organizing such a meeting.
Я могу, конечно, долго рассказывать, поскольку я живу в Киеве, я активно участвую в различных процессах, сейчас связанных и с тем, чтобы понять, что происходит вокруг, и с тем, чтобы помочь и тем евреям, которые собираются уехать, и тем, которые пока остаются. Поэтому, может быть, вы будете задавать мне конкретные вопросы, чтобы я долго не рассказывал. Возможно, часть из того, что я могу рассказать, вы уже знаете.
I can be speaking for a long time because I'm now in Kiev and I'm connected to all of the questions related to Jewish life in Kiev. And maybe you can be asking me direct questions so that I can tell you on some specific topics instead of making a kind of presentation.
Okay, can you describe what the situation is like on the ground there? I see that you're sitting right now in the dark. What is happening around you? And what are the difficulties that you and the community are facing with the encroaching Russians?
Вы могли бы описать ситуацию, потому что я вижу, что вы сейчас сидите в темноте, и вы могли бы сказать, с какими вызовами сейчас сталкивается еврейская община в свете продолжающегося русского наступления?
Ситуация в разных общинах Украины, а общины есть более чем в 100 городах Украины, очень разная. Довольно спокойная на западе Украины и очень драматическое на востоке Украины. В Киеве более-менее спокойно, хотя на окраинах идут бои.
The situation in different Jewish communities is very different because there are Jewish communities in over 100 cities and towns of Ukraine. In the west, it's calmer. In the east, it's more dramatic. In Kiev, it's relatively calm, despite the fact that there are some fights on the outskirts of the city.
Наша деятельность ВАДА Украины, такой амбрелла-организации, куда входят 300 организаций из 90 городов Украины, сегодня заключается в том, что мы отставили все наши многочисленные проекты и программы в сторону и занимаемся только вопросами, связанными с войной.
Our activities at the moment of VAD of Ukraine, it's an umbrella organization which brings together around 300 organizations from 90 different towns and cities of Ukraine. At the moment, we have put aside all of our programs and projects, and we're totally focused upon the questions of war.
Да. Сегодня есть два основных направления нашей деятельности. Даже, может быть, три. Первое – это чисто информационное. Мы на связи с общинами различными, которые в Украине есть. Мы обмениваемся с ними информацией, спрашиваем, в чем они нуждаются, в эвакуации или в помощи на месте. И потом переходим к двум другим видам деятельности. Первое – это помощь в эвакуации. Второе – это помощь тем, кто остается. Вот мы каждый день переводим средства в те общины, которые не могут помочь своим членам осуществлять самые простые вещи. Покупать продукты, лекарства и так далее. Из многих общин невозможно сейчас эвакуироваться. И мы ищем пути для того, чтобы их эвакуировать из тех мест и хотя бы привезти в те города, это в Киев, Днепропетровск, в Одессу, откуда возможно уже организованная эвакуация. Мы на связи со всеми службами, и с Нативом, и с Сахнутом. Мы на связи с общинами Румынии, Словакии, Венгрии, Польши, которые принимают беженцев с той стороны. Все эти контакты у нас есть, мы ими пользуемся и отправляем людей, снабжаем их этими контактами, чтобы они могли связываться в зависимости от того, что они хотят. Они хотят репатриироваться в Израиль, или они пока хотят остаться на западе Украины, или они хотят переждать это тяжелое время в Европе.
At the moment, all of our efforts are directed into three main activities. The first activity is the information activity. We're keeping communication with the communities and keeping the hand on the pulse and trying to get in touch with them and understand their current needs and situations. The second direction is the organization and arrangement for the plans for evacuation. And the third is the provision of aid to the ones who stay in Ukraine. At the moment, we are distributing funds for the necessities of the members of Jewish communities who have decided to stay in Ukraine during this time and who cannot depart and who cannot evacuate due to a number of reasons. We are arranging for evacuation within Ukraine to the more safe destinations from the ones which are at the immediate threat of military action. At the moment, we are in touch with major Jewish organizations like Nativ and the Jewish Agency for Israel, and with the communities of adjacent countries like Romania, Hungary, and Poland, and arranging
Slovakia.
and Slovakia and Moldova. And arranging for the departure of the ones who would like to evacuate, whether they decide to perform aliyah to Israel or move to neighboring countries, or help them if they decide to stay in place and remain where they are at the moment.
У нас уже есть примерно 20 волонтеров, которые занимаются этой работой. Быть постоянно на связи с общинами. Есть координаторы, которые общается с израильскими организациями, которые находятся на границах Украины с той стороны границы, как с Министерством иностранных дел, с Нативом и с Сахнутом.
At the moment, we have around 20 volunteers who are involved in keeping this communication constant. We are in touch with coordinators, and including coordinators from Israel and from representatives of Nativ and Jewish Agency.
What percentage of the population has stayed in Ukraine or is planning to stay in Ukraine at this point?
Какой процент населения планирует оставаться в Украине в настоящее время?
Мы имеем большой опыт по Донбассу. Война, которая началась не неделю назад, а еще в 2014 году, то есть 8 лет уже идет эта война, на Донбассе проживала община, на оккупированной русскими части Донбасса проживало примерно 20 тысяч человек, которые имели право на возвращение в Израиль по Хохашвот.
We have a big experience in this area, starting from the year 2014. In the region of Donbass, there lived a community which constituted of around 20,000 people who were eligible under law of return.
За 8 лет конфликта с Донбасса уехало 17-18 тысяч евреев.
During the 8 years of military conflict, around 17 to 18,000 persons have left Donbas region.
Примерно 90% из них уехало в сторону Украины и 10% в сторону России.
Around 90% of these people have moved into mainland Ukraine, and around 10% went to Russia.
Но так или иначе, и те, и другие потом оказались практически все в Израиле.
But in the end, most of these persons ended up in Israel.
Таким образом, если мы экстраполируем то, что происходило на Донбассе, на всю Украину, и если конфликт в Украине будет такой же затяжной, как на Донбассе, то мы получим примерно такой же порядок чисел, что из тех, там, допустим, 250 тысяч людей, которые имеют право на алию в Украине сегодня, правда, раввины говорят о большем количестве, примерно 70% за те годы, что будет идти война, также выйдут из Украины.
If we extrapolate this situation of Donbas region to entire Ukraine, then we will have the following. If we consider the number of persons who are eligible under law of return as around 250,000 persons, however, the rabbis are giving a bigger number than this, then around 70% of these persons will be departing Ukraine, and will be departing Ukraine. If this conflict will be as prolonged as the one which happened in Donbas region.
Wow. Do the Jews in Ukraine feel that they might be especially targeted by the Russians coming in for negative activity?
Есть ли у евреев Украины опасения относительно того, что они могут быть мишенью для российских войск через некоторых негативных действий со стороны российских войск?
Еврейский аспект не является важным в этой войне. То есть целью России не является что-то сделать с евреями. Целью России является лишить независимости Украину и включить Украину в создающуюся Путиным новую Российскую империю.
The Jewish aspect of this ongoing situation does not have anything to do with the Jews, because the main stress of this situation, and the main target of this war for Putin is to liquidate Ukrainian sovereignty and to include Ukraine into the Union state.
Но это объективная часть ситуации. Что касается субъективно, то евреи привыкли бояться всех войн, которые происходят на территории в тех странах, где они проживают, поэтому они стараются на всякий случай покинуть эту территорию, а дальше уже как получится. Поэтому мы все-таки думаем, что будет большое количество беженцев, часть из которых поедет в Израиль.
This is the objective state of affairs, but if we take the subjective state of affairs, we know that the Jews usually are wary of military conflict in the states where they reside, and therefore we expect to have quite a high number of refugees coming out of the country.
Thank you. I think we have had many questions, and I'm going to start to address some of those questions that have come through to both of you. But let me start with some questions that came through for Ambassador Leon. A number of people are asking about the status of those who are coming out of Ukraine who want to make Aliyah. Whether there are some people who are being rejected for that. How is it being handled in terms of people who may not be and immediately, obviously, qualifying for Aliyah status?
Okay, so we can't, according to international law, we cannot reject a Ukrainian right now who wants to come to Israel. We have only to check if he has a relative, a first-degree relative. So if there is a first-degree relative, he can come to Israel for 6 months. And then he will be as a tourist, or I don't know exactly, because they are still looking what will be the exact status. But as I said, a first-degree relative of an Israeli can come to Israel. So you can have parents of an Israeli, spouses, children, they can all come right now to Israel. And person, a Ukrainian who doesn't have a first-degree Israeli citizen, first-degree relationship with an Israeli citizen, sorry. So there is a possibility through the Ministry of Interior of Israel to invite him to come to Israel. There is some kind of caution which will be asked to be deposited. And that's all. And he can also, he will be also, or she will be also able to stay for 6 months, and then it will be decided what will be the status. So in any case, anyone who wishes to come to Israel and has any kind of relation with Israel will be welcome in Israel. We have here, as I said, the people from Nativ who are in charge of checking the zakaut, the right to come to Israel, are working really almost day and night, family by family. People, and in the next room there are the people from the Sochnut and the Keren HaYedidut of Eckstein preparing the planes and the tickets and the integration in Israel. So everything is prepared. We are trying to do the process as quick as possible in order to have the people leaving Moldova and coming to Israel.
What are there some people who are arriving at the border without their papers because that they might need for the process because they had to leave so suddenly? And are most of the people wanting to make a permanent aliyah, or are there people, are there a large percentage of people who want to come to Israel to stay out, until the time when it might be safer for them to return to Ukraine?
Look, the process of aliyah, it's a process. I mean, if you make aliyah, you make aliyah. If you decide to leave afterwards, that's your decision. But people deciding to make aliyah, they will have the Israeli passports. They will have the opportunity to live in Israel. They will get money and ulpan and everything in order to live in Israel. So that's what is offered to these people, to stay in Israel. People who only wish to come to Israel, as I said, if they have a relative, first degree relative, there is no problem to come to Israel. And the other ones, as I said, they also, if they know somebody in Israel who can put the caution and invite them, there shouldn't be a problem. People without papers, that's what we are doing the whole day. There is no one really without a paper. We haven't seen somebody without a paper. People have expired passports, people married and have children and they were not registered, so there are no Israeli papers for these people. That's not a problem, we are doing it. A Ukrainian without papers, I haven't seen.
And what about those who are found to not qualify for Aliyah? What are they being sent back to Ukraine, or are they being helped in the countries where they are? What are you doing with those individuals?
Nobody can be sent back to Ukraine because Ukraine is a war zone, and according to the right, I mean, to the humanitarian laws of war, you cannot send refugees back to a war zone. So even if they come to Israel, they will stay in Israel. Israel will check their status, and they will be able to stay for a couple of months in Israel till the situation would be better. We have a problem of asylum because in Israel, we don't have, people are not qualified to ask for political asylum in Israel. Only Jews can make Aliyah and so on. It's a little bit complicated. But even though if they are applying for political asylum in Israel because of the situation, they will not be sent back. I mean, the case will be looked at and it will take time. And in the meantime, they stay in Israel. So nobody is being sent back. And also, according to the laws, you are being sent back to the place where your plane came from. So there are no planes coming from Ukraine, no planes coming from Russia, and no planes coming from Moldova right now.
There were a couple of questions that were asked about the orphanage that you mentioned and what happened with those children that came out. Where are they headed to? What is the plan for them?
Okay, they went to Germany, the whole orphanage. We have a very big problem to take them to Israel, to make them making Aliyah because they are Ukrainian citizens. And according to Ukraine, you cannot take these children out of the European Union or out, let's say, out of a country which has some kind of agreement with them where you can put the children. So Germany was the best place to have them right now. And I hope that when they will be 18, they will make Aliyah.
I want to ask a question for Yosef that came through. We had heard some reports that the new Babin Yar memorial had been hit. Do you know if that is actually correct, or what is the situation there with that memorial?
Я бы хотел для начала немножко добавить то, что сказал посол Леон.
I'd like to add a bit to what Ambassador Leon has said.
И спасибо ему за рассказ о том, какие правила сегодня в Израиле.
I thank him for saying about the current rules in Israel.
Но мы с ним смотрим на ситуацию с разных сторон границы Украины.
But at the moment, we're looking at the situation in Ukraine from different viewpoints.
Я также еще не встречал людей, которые без документов бы очутились на границе.
I also have not met previously any people who would come to the border without any kind of documents.
Но им в таком случае не надо выезжать за границу, они могут спокойно остаться в пограничных местах, куда война, по крайней мере, скоро не дойдет. Это
even in
Черновцы, Закарпатье, Ивано-Франковск, Львов, Ровно, Луцк. Там достаточно мест, кстати, и Тернополь, и мы на связи с общинами, которые принимают всех, независимо от того, хотят ли они потом пересекать границу или хотят переждать там это время. Понятно, что ситуация, их мысли, их надежды меняются каждый день. Поэтому мы каждый день сталкиваемся с ситуацией, когда человек хотел посидеть в Черновцах, а потом он вдруг решил переехать, и этому тоже надо помочь. Очереди на границе очень большие. Они такие большие, что они просто отталкивают людей, которые не могут долго ждать в очереди. Например, очередь на границе, основной переезд в Польшу, была 2 дня назад 25 километров. Это же машины стоят на переезд. Пешком не пропускают. Израилю было очень тяжело даже вытащить израильтян из этой очереди, провести их без очереди, потому что, естественно, этому сопротивлялись местные жители. Еще сложнее было бы извлечь из этой очереди евреев. Поэтому, если ситуация продолжится таким образом, то, может быть, мы подумаем совместно с вами об организации какой-то гуманитарных пунктов вдоль этой очереди, которые могли бы приютить этих людей, дать им отдохнуть, дать им горячее питье, чем-то накормить. Потому что 25 километров люди с машины стояли по 3 суток в этой очереди. На границе с Румынией очередь была 10 километров. И никто ее не организовывал, только уровень самоорганизации, а значит, там были уже и бандиты, которые управляли этой очередью, и тянули с людей деньги за то, что они без очереди бы переходили. Эти все обстоятельства очень усложняют вопрос перехода через границу.
Да, если, пожалуйста, чуть-чуть короче. The situation with the people who come to the border without any documents is as follows. These persons have the possibility to wait for a prolonged period of time in the regions which are adjacent to neighboring countries. For example, we can call the cities of Lutsk, Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, Chernivtsi, which are eligible for temporary evacuation. After this, and Transcarpathia region. After that, we have these people who might suddenly make up their minds and decide to cross the border, but then we face the situation when the queues at the border checkpoints are quite long. And for example, the queue on the checkpoints with Poland was around 25 kilometers long. And these are thousands and thousands of people who are basically dependent on the self-organization of these queues, because no formal control of the queues and the order of passage of these border checkpoints was implemented, and we faced a situation when it was very difficult to take any kind of Israelis or people who are eligible under law of return and make any kind of green corridors for them to actually pass the border faster than it would be in a general order. The queue on Romanian border constituted around 10 kilometers, and in this situation we face the situation when these queues are starting to be self-organized. There are some machinations involved with this queue. There are some bandits who are also trying to manipulate the order of passage of the border. And in general, this situation with border checkpoints is quite tense at the moment.
And here in Moldova, we have queues of 20 kilometers in the north in Mogiliv-Podolsky, and in the south coming from Odessa there are around 15 kilometers of queues. And again, Joseph is right, we cannot do anything, and I'm trying to tell it also to the Israelis. First of all, I cannot go to the Ukrainian side. It's war in Ukraine, and then don't let us to come in. And what are the people waiting? I mean, we cannot, it will be riots. Even, I'm not talking about Chilul Hashem and looking at the Jews who are doing it, the Israelis. That's another point. But anyone trying to cut the line will be, I think, even killed on the spot, because people are waiting there 40 hours in the cars. You cannot do it. So people have to be patient, and the moment that they're coming to the border, then that's the point that we are meeting them. But before, it's very, very hard.
So just to clarify.
Just a moment. Я не закончил.
I have not finished yet my part of the story.
Okay, please.
Мы тех, которые двигаются к границе, и тех, кого мы отправляем, и тех, кого отправляют другие, мы их информируем, в каких точках легче перейти границу. Например, со стороны Черновиц в Молдову попасть намного легче, чем со стороны Могилев-Подольска и со стороны Одессы. Позавчера я знаю, что очередь была не более 2 часов. Там есть 3 перехода в Черновицкой области, и все они гораздо быстрее, чем другие. Кроме этого, в Словакию и в Венгрию из Закарпатья попасть намного легче, чем в Румынию из Черновицкой области или в Польшу из Львовской области. Наши волонтеры это знают и сообщают об этом и местным организациям, и тем, которые едут.
At the moment, we are informing the one who have decided to cross the border about the checkpoints where it's much easier to cross the border than on other directions. For example, if we're talking about crossing the border from the region of Chernivtsi, there are 3 checkpoints there, and it was possible to cross the border with a waiting time of around 2 hours, and it's much shorter than trying to cross the border from the sides of Mogilев-Podolsky or Odessa. In addition, it was relatively easy to cross the border to Slovakia and Hungary, and we are at the moment heavily involved in providing the information to the refugees who would like to cross the border on where it is much easier to do that.
Еще один момент, очень важный и грустный, что и Натив, и Сахнут, и МИД Израиля только разворачивают свои службы в сопредельных странах. И еще не начали работать на полную мощность, а уже неделю идет поток беженцев через границу.
Another sad situation is that Nativ Jewish Agency and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel are only starting to deploy their activities in the neighboring country, while the flow of refugees has been flowing for almost a week now.
Например, мой товарищ, который позавчера переехал в Румынию на машине, сможет улететь в Израиль за свой счет не раньше воскресенья, потому что ждать оформления документов на репатриацию очень большая очередь в посольстве в Румынии. И он сказал, что там стоит в очереди более 300 человек, и ему не обещают, а у него 4 детей. Поэтому он заказал себе билеты на воскресенье и намерен улететь своим ходом в Израиль из Бухареста и уже в Израиле начать процесс оформления.
A friend of mine who had crossed the Romanian border the day before, he will have the possibility to depart Romania for Israel only on Sunday. The queue for applying the documents for conducting Aliyah is very big, and there are around 300 persons in that queue at the moment. And due to the fact that he has 4 children, he decided to purchase his own tickets and to further apply for the citizenship from within the state of Israel after he arrives.
До Сахнута, до Натива, до посольства, хотя мы имеем их телефоны и передаем их тем, кто выезжает, очень сложно дозвониться. Можно целый день не дозвониться до представителя Сахнута. Из-за этого люди делают ошибки, едут не в ближайший аэропорт, а едут, например, в Бухарест, хотя до Яз намного ближе. Из Яз тоже можно улететь в Израиль. Но поскольку они не могут дозвониться по тем телефонам, которые мы им даем, до Сахнута, их неправильно, они сами неправильно ориентируются. Хотя я, например, говорю им, что через молдавскую границу до Яз доехать легче, чем до Бухареста, и улететь можно из Яз быстрее. Но люди, которые религиозные, вот попадают к пятнице, они будут вынуждены ждать до воскресенья, чтобы лететь в Израиль. Значит, не все могут себе позволить купить билеты, они же должны ждать репатриации. Те общины, которые принимают людей в Румынии, в Молдове, в Словакии, в Венгрии, в Польше, они предупреждают, что они могут их приютить, беженцев, на 2-3 дня, а потом они должны как-то что-то придумать, потому что прибывают новые и новые, а места ограничены. И это тоже проблема.
The representatives of Jaffe Nativ and the embassy are quite hard to reach at the moment, and we have situations where people are trying to reach them without any luck, and they're not getting the adequate information about where they can go to Israel from. For example, there is a situation when they can actually depart not from Bucharest, but from Yassi, which is a far shorter distance from Ukraine than Bucharest. But then we are heavily involved in providing this information and giving hints to the one who are departing about some shorter routes, but unfortunately it's not performed through some other organizations. In addition, there are complications with the religious people who will be forced to wait until Sunday to depart for Israel because of Shabbat considerations. And another question is that in the neighboring countries like Romania, Poland, Slovakia, and Moldova, the capabilities of local communities are limited, and they can host their refugees for a couple of days. And due to the fact that they have limited capability for hosting, people after these couple of days will be forced to move onwards and continue with their evacuation plans.
Thank you.
Конечно, со временем наладится это дело. Но я бы предложил сейчас, just a moment, Deborah.
I just want to clarify two things so people would understand, because I think there were some questions and people are, in order to understand what you were telling us and giving us some of this information, I wanted to jump back to Ambassador Leon for just a moment, because there were some questions, first of all, about clearly, Yosef is raising some questions about different, more easily accessible border crossings and what the MFA and Jewish Agency, et cetera, will be able to do to be at those crossings. But there was also some questions from the audience that we have here who are not as familiar with all of the inner workings and how it works, Nativ with the government, so that people can understand how the processing, those who don't have as much background to understand how this is working. And then Yosef, of course, will come back to you.
So I want only to explain that in the last week, hundreds of Israeli emissaries from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, from the Sochnut, and from Nativ were sent out. We are at the border crossings, and we are in the capital cities in the capital cities in the neighboring countries. Nativ is the organization of the Prime Minister office, checking the documents and interviewing the families or the people in order to understand if they have the right to apply for Aliyah. So it takes time. And as I said, today, my colleague who is sitting here the next door took 30 families, 30 families, which means that he has to check them, he has to interview them, he has to understand if they say that they have a Jewish grandmother, where was she living, etc. It takes time. And what they were doing and what was taking a week maybe to get the okay of the right of return is taking 1 day now. And then in the next room, we have people from the Sochnut who can help to prepare the Aliyah in a couple of hours, and people from the Keren HaYedidut who are paying for this Aliyah. Now, the flights and the routes and all the things, the moment that a person have left Ukraine, he's free to do whatever he wants. He's free, he's safe, he's in free countries. He can choose to be in any countries that he wants. So he can come to our offices. We are all the time, we are publishing the numbers. We have people at the border crossing with Israeli flag and waiting for the people and telling them where to go. We have shuttles on the Polish border. We have shuttles taking the people to the Israeli posts. At some border crossing, even we have people from Nativ and Sochnut waiting and doing the process at the border. So, you know, only in Moldova, there are 42 border crossings. We cannot be everywhere. So what we are telling the people, okay, you're safe, you've crossed the border, come to Chisinau, come to the office, let's do it. And then you can continue with normal documents, with a travel document, with your Aliyah document. About the flights, there are no, as I said, there is a no-fly zone in Moldova, a no-fly zone in Ukraine. We cannot bring in planes to take the people to Israel, so that they have to take the commercial flights. So you have commercial flights in all the capitals around Ukraine, and yes, people have to take the train, to take the bus, to come there. We don't have a solution for it. People who are in need, who don't have money, there are foundations here who are paying for their tickets. We are trying to publish the everything. So we are trying to do it. And yes, it's war. We cannot enter Ukraine and take the people out.
Thank you. Yosef, could you address the question about Babin Yar, about the memorial and what the situation is with that memorial, if it has been destroyed, if it's in what condition it is at this point?
Позавчера две крылатые ракеты примерно в 6 часов вечера упали на территорию Бабьего Яра.
The day before yesterday, 2 cruise missiles have fallen on the territory of Babi Yar.
Кирилл был по моей просьбе на этом месте, чтобы убедиться, что там произошло. Эти ракеты две были направлены не против мемориала Баби Яра, или были направлены в телевышку, которая находится на территории Баби Яра.
Upon my request, Kirill went there to check the situation with the memorial, and I can say that these 2 missiles, they were not directed against Babi Yar. Their main target was the TV center, and namely the TV signal tower, which is situated on the territory of Babi Yar.
Дело в том, что территория Бабьего Яра занимает 70 гектаров. Это огромная территория, на которой есть различные постройки, учреждения, жилые дома и, конечно же, различные памятники.
The fact is that the territory of Babi Yar is around 70 hectares, and this area includes a number of buildings, a number of facilities, including the memorials dedicated to Holocaust.
Там есть около 40 памятников, которые поставили различные группы в память о жертвах и Холокоста, и других нееврейских жертв.
There are around 40 different monuments there, which are dedicated both to Holocaust and to victims of other victims of this area.
К счастью, эти две ракеты не задели памятники.
Luckily, these 2 missiles did not hit the memorials and the monuments.
Но один крупный осколок одной из ракет пробил забор вокруг здания, которое находится под реконструкцией с целью создать там музей памяти жертв Бабьего Яра.
But there was one instance of one fragment fracturing the fence which surrounds, it's a technical fence which surrounds the building on Melnikova 44, which is at the moment under reconstruction for further becoming the museum dedicated to Babi Yar.
На самом
Thank
деле
you.
этот обстрел,
We're gonna be
этот
a little.
обстрел Бабьего Яра не является самым как бы кричащим. Это нам ближе, евреям, это место. Но есть гораздо худшие проявления российской агрессии. Они обстреливают жилые дома и в Киеве, и в других городах. Они обстреливают больницы, детские сады. Даже один роддом обстреляли. Есть много жертв среди мирного населения, в том числе и дети от этих обстрелов. Вот эта ракета, которая попала в техническое здание возле Бабьего Яра, убила 5 человек, которые находились рядом на улице.
I can say that at the moment, this shelling of Babi Yar is close to us as Jews, but the fact is that the Russians are conducting a big number of more dire atrocities, like shelling of apartment blocks, hospitals, the kindergartens, and these cruise missiles that fell on Babi Yar have actually killed 5 persons who were just the passerbys.
Например, сегодня в одном месте Украины они расстреливали легковые машины, которые двигались по шоссе, несмотря на то, что было ясно, что это не военные машины.
For example, today they were shelling and they were shooting at the private cars, despite the fact that it was quite clear that these were the private cars, but not the military targets.
Вчера одна из колонн российской техники догадалась посадить на броню танков детей и женщин для того, чтобы украинские военные не стреляли.
Yesterday, one of the columns of Russian troops have managed to put children and women upon their armored vehicles in order to prevent Ukrainian troops from firing at them.
Русские используют бомбы, запрещенные различными международными конвенциями.
Russians are utilizing bombs which are prohibited by various international conventions.
В Киевской области была сброшена так называемая вакуумная бомба, категорически запрещенная к использованию.
In Kiev Oblast, we had an instance of them dropping a vacuum bomb, which is categorically prohibited from usage.
На центр Харькова были сброшены кассетные бомбы, также категорически запрещенные к использованию.
And there were cassette bombs deployed in Kharkov.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, just one second. We were scheduled for an hour, and I want to thank Ambassador Leon for joining us, who I know he took time out of what he's doing on the ground. And as you had said, Yosef, also that people are eagerly awaiting the assistance of Ambassador Leon and his staff in order to be able to process their papers and get them able to get out to Israel. And we do appreciate that. I know many people have asked how they can help in this situation, if there are volunteers needed, or is it a matter of just sending funds to the appropriate places, which of course we will get out information on that. So if
it's more funds than volunteers. There are a lot of volunteers here, and as I said before, I'm seeing here the Jewish community of Moldova. I'm seeing what they are doing, all the 3 communities together. Yeah. For once, to have everyone together working, it's war, and they are doing whatever they can, but they need funds. They need funds to feed all these people, and
So
if you want, I will send you some names of the 2 rabbis and the head of the community, and then because the three of them, they need funds here.
Okay, we will put out information as to how we can send funds through the various organizations, whether it's through the JDC, the Jewish Agency, or some direct funding. If that is what is necessary, we'll be in touch both with Mr. Zissels, of course, is a very and Ambassador Leon, of course, is a very complicated and ongoing and fluid situation in Ukraine and on the border of Ukraine in all the various countries. We will keep in touch with both of you and with our other various contacts on the ground as this develops, and we hope and pray that there is peace soon, that all of you stay safe, that all of your friends, family, and fellow community members, those working on the ground, those living on the ground are safe and get out to where they need to go. We'll keep this in touch, and we will keep our communities updated. And we do very, very much appreciate that you've taken time out of what must be a very busy time for you to share with us. And we wish you really only safe travels and continued time with your work.
Thank you very much, Yosef. Udachi.
Thank you, and
תודה רבה, ג'אל.
thank